Have you ever just looked at a newborn and wondered what is really going on in there? How do they go from this tiny being who basically just eats, sleeps, and cries to a toddler with a whole personality and these deep connections with people? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to trace that incredible 2-year journey.
You see a baby laugh like this, and you can't help but smile back, right? But what's happening behind those eyes? Is it just a reflex? Or is there a really complex inner world starting to take shape? That is the big question we are exploring.
So here's the core of it. We're going to break down how an infant goes from a super basic set of feelings to a full-blown sense of self, someone who can feel trust, anxiety, and the need to do things on their own. And all of this happens in just about 24 months. It is one of the fastest and most profound transformations in a human life.
So, where does this all even begin? Well, it all starts with a surprisingly simple emotional toolkit that every single baby is born with.
A newborn is really only working with 3 basic states. They show them through facial expressions, body language, sounds, the whole deal. They're either content and happy, interested in something new, or they're in distress. And that's pretty much it. You can think of these as the primary colors. From these 3, all the complex shades of their future emotional life are going to be mixed. And it happens fast. Those basic feelings almost immediately start getting shaped by their interactions with the world. And this brings us to the first major challenge of their young lives: learning who and what to trust. This is where the famous psychologist Erik Erikson comes in. He argued that in that first year, an infant is facing this fundamental conflict: basic trust versus mistrust. The question they are constantly, subconsciously trying to answer is this world a safe place? Can I count on the people around me? So how do you build that trust? Well, as you can see, it's all about consistent, loving care. When a baby's needs are met reliably, when they're hungry and they get fed, when they cry and they get comforted, they develop that sense of basic trust. But Erikson said the positive outcome here is more than just trust. It's a deep-seated feeling he called hope, this core belief that even when things get tough, good things can still happen. And wow, you can see this social world just explode in the first 6 months. At just 6 weeks, you get the social smile. This isn't just gas, it's a real response to another person. By 2 or 3 months, they can actually tell when a caregiver's expression changes from happy to sad. And by the halfway mark of that first year, they've got their own unique ways of engaging with people. Now, as their world and their minds get bigger, a much more complex and sometimes pretty difficult emotion makes its debut: anxiety. And while it can be really tough for parents to see, it's actually a great sign of healthy cognitive development. This anxiety usually shows up in 2 distinct forms around 6 to 9 months. You've got stranger anxiety, that classic wariness of unfamiliar faces, right? And then there's separation anxiety, which is the distress they feel when their main caregiver leaves the room. Both of these show that the baby has formed a really strong bond, and now they can remember and prefer familiar people over strangers. Okay, let's jump into the second year, because this is where things get really interesting. After building that foundation of trust, the toddler's next big project is figuring out, who am I as an individual? And we're back to Erikson for this next key stage, which he called autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is the famous me do it phase. The central struggle here is their powerful, powerful drive for independence, clashing with the potential for feeling shame or doubt if they're criticized or they fail. Then, a huge leap happens around 18 months, the dawn of self-awareness. You start hearing it in their language. They start using words like me and my, and it's famously demonstrated in what's called the Rouge test. If you sneak a little dot of lipstick on their nose and show them a mirror, they'll touch their own nose, not the reflection. They get it. That person in the mirror is them. Okay, so we've seen how this sense of self starts to emerge, but we all know that babies are different right from the very beginning, don't we? That brings us to the fascinating concept of temperament, the inborn part of our personality. Temperament really breaks down into 2 key parts. First, there's reactivity. That's the how fast and how strong of their reactions. Are they easily startled? Do they get intensely joyful? Then there's self-regulation, which is their budding ability to manage those big reactions. This is really the biological foundation for what later grows into their personality. Researchers Thomas and Chess actually categorize these styles. And what's so interesting is the breakdown. They found that about 40% of kids have an easy temperament. They're generally cheerful and adapt pretty well. About 10% are difficult, with more intense negative reactions. And another 15% are slow to warm up. They're a bit less active and take longer to adapt. The rest are a unique mix of all these traits.
Okay, so we've got temperament, that's our innate style, the nature part of the equation. But how does that interact with our experiences? The answer lies in our first and most important relationship, which scientists call attachment.
This picture is from Harry Harlow's famous experiments from back in the day. He gave baby monkeys two fake mothers. One was made of cold wire but provided food, and the other was made of soft cloth and provided nothing but comfort. The monkeys overwhelmingly chose the cloth mother, clinging to her, especially when they were scared.
The takeaway here was absolutely revolutionary. Attachment isn't just about who feeds you. It's about who provides what Harlow called contact comfort, that feeling of warmth, safety, and security. This one finding completely changed how we understand the needs of an infant.
So, how do we actually measure the quality of this bond? Well, researchers use this really clever experiment called the Strange Situation. It's a series of short episodes where a baby's in a playroom with her caregiver, a stranger comes in, the caregiver leaves, and then they're reunited. By watching how the baby reacts to being left and then reunited, researchers can identify different styles of attachment. And the results reveal these different attachment styles. As you can see, the most common, by far, is secure attachment at about 62%. These kids use their parent as a secure base to explore. They get upset when the parent leaves, but they're easily comforted when they come back. The other styles, like avoidant or disorganized, are less common and usually point to different patterns of interaction with the caregiver. So, we've got temperament, which is nature, and we've got attachment, which is largely nurture. The final piece of this whole puzzle is how these two dance together. And this brings us to this key concept called goodness of fit. And look, this isn't about having an easy baby. It's all about the match between a child's temperament and their environment. So, for example, a slow-to-warm-up child is going to do best with a parent who is patient and encouraging, not one who pushes them into new situations too fast. When there's a good fit, any child can thrive. So we've seen how the foundations of who we are, our ability to trust, our sense of self, our emotional style, is all laid down in these first 2 incredible years. And this leaves us with a pretty big question. How much does this early blueprint really define the rest of our lives? That's a question psychologists are still exploring, and honestly, it's something for all of us to think about.